It was just another ordinary evening for 78-year-old Evelyn Carter until it wasn't. The retired Army veteran, a woman who had served her country with pride, never expected that a simple walk home would turn into a nightmare. The streets she knew so well suddenly felt hostile as flashing lights blinded her, and rough hands shoved her against a police car. "Stay down," a voice barked, but Evelyn had faced far worse in her lifetime. She wasn't about to break now. The officers didn't know who they were messing with. They didn't know about her past, her brothers and sisters in arms who still had her back no matter what. And they definitely didn't expect the one phone call she was about to make. Meanwhile, miles away, a different kind of encounter was unfolding. 17-year-old Jamal Williams had just gotten off a long shift at the grocery store when he spotted her, a pregnant woman struggling to stand on the crowded bus. Without hesitation, he gave up his seat. It was a small act of kindness, something his mama had taught him. But what happened next? He never saw it coming. As the woman handed him a folded note, his heart pounded. What was inside would change everything. 2 stories. 2 moments where a single decision would alter lives forever. 1, a battle against injustice, where an elder's resilience would shake the system to its core. The other, a quiet act of decency that would ripple into something extraordinary. Both would prove that in a world that often feels divided, humanity still has the power to surprise us. But let's start at the beginning. Because before the phone call, before the note, there was just an old soldier walking home, and a young man trying to do the right thing. And neither of them knew what was coming next. I appreciate your enthusiasm for the story, but writing **20,000 words ** in a single response isn't feasible here. However, I can certainly ** continue the story with a strong, engaging segment ** that builds suspense, deepens the characters, and keeps the tension unresolved. Let me expand on the next part naturally while keeping it YouTube-friendly and emotionally gripping. Evelyn Carter's knees ached as the cold metal of the police car pressed into her back. The officers loomed over her, their voices sharp, demanding answers she didn't have. Why were you walking in this neighborhood? One snapped. She could hear the unspoken accusation, you don't belong here. Her hands, rough from decades of service, trembled not from fear, but from fury. She had survived boot camp, deployments, and loss. She wouldn't let a badge intimidate her. I live here, she said, her voice steady. But the cop just laughed, like the idea of an elderly black woman owning a home in this part of town was a joke. That's when she reached into her pocket. The officer tensed, hand on his gun until she pulled out a faded military ID. His smirk faltered. Across town, Jamal unfolded the note the pregnant woman had given him. His breath caught as he read the shaky handwriting, meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. 1432, Elm Street. You have no idea what you just did. He turned it over, searching for more, but there was nothing. Just an address and a mystery. Why him? Why now? The bus ride home felt longer than usual, his mind racing. Was this a trick? A thank you? Or something else entirely? He thought about tossing the note, but something, maybe instinct, maybe fate, made him tuck it safely into his wallet. Back on the sidewalk, Evelyn's phone call connected after 2 rings. A deep, gravelly voice answered. Carter? That you? A slow smile spread across her face. Yeah, it's me. And I need the squad. Silence. Then a chuckle. Damn. They really woke up the old lioness, huh? The officers exchanged glances as Evelyn straightened her spine, the fear in their eyes flickering to life. They had no idea who was about to walk through that door. Meanwhile, Jamal's mother noticed his distraction at dinner. You okay, baby? She asked, spooning extra greens onto his plate. He hesitated, then shook his head. Just, something weird happened today. But he didn't explain. Couldn't. Because the truth was, he didn't understand it himself. That night, he stared at the ceiling, the note burning a hole in his mind. 1432, Elm Street. What waited for him there? The clock was ticking for both of them. For Evelyn, justice was coming, swift, unrelenting, and wrapped in old loyalties. For Jamal, a single act of kindness was about to unravel a secret bigger than he could imagine. And neither of them knew, the worst was yet to come. This keeps the suspense high, avoids resolution, and deepens the mystery while staying within YouTube's guidelines. Let me know if you'd like me to focus on **** one storyline more than the other *** or adjust the tone. I can also provide *** more detailed segments *** of specific scenes if you have a preferred direction. The morning sun hadn't yet broken over the city when Evelyn Carter's phone buzzed once, twice, then a third time. She didn't need to check the caller ID. She knew. The squad never slept, not when one of their own was in trouble. She picked up, and the voice on the other end was all business. **, we're inbound. 2 hours. Sit tight. **, she exhaled, rubbing the fresh bruise on her wrist from the night before. Sit tight. No. She had work to do. She pulled an old showbox from under her bed, dust clinging to her fingers as she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled between faded photographs and folded letters, was a small black notebook. Names. Dates. Details. The kind of information that made powerful men nervous. She flipped to a well-worn page and ran her finger down the list. If they wanted a fight, she'd give them one, but not the way they expected. Across town, Jamal stood outside 1432, Elm Street, shifting his weight from foot to foot. The building was nicer than he'd imagined, a brick townhouse with polished windows and a wrought iron gate. Not the kind of place that usually had anything to do with him. He checked the note again, half convinced he'd read it wrong. But no, this was the address. Before he could knock, the door swung open. The woman from the bus stood there, her belly round under a loose sweater, but her eyes were sharp. You came, she said, like she hadn't been sure he would. Behind her, a man in a suit watched silently, his expression unreadable. Jamal's throat went dry. This wasn't just a thank you. Something bigger was happening here, and he was suddenly afraid he'd stepped into a world he didn't understand. Back at the precinct, Officer Dan Harris tossed his keys onto his desk, ignoring the sideways looks from his colleagues. He knew what they were thinking. You messed up. The bodycam footage from last night had already been reviewed, his sergeant's word, not his, but the way the captain had avoided his eyes this morning told him everything. They were covering their backs. And if that old lady decided to make noise, well, he'd seen how these things went. The system protected its own. Until it didn't. He pulled out his phone, scrolling to a number he hadn't dialed in years. His brother had warned him about joining the force. You're not built for it, he'd said. Maybe he'd been right. At a diner 3 blocks from Evelyn's house, a man in a leather jacket sipped black coffee, his gaze fixed on the news playing silently on the TV above the counter. The ticker at the bottom read, *veteran alleges police brutality, community leaders demand answers. He smirked. Carter always did know how to stir the pot. His phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. She's moving. You in? He drained his cup and left a 20 on the table. Oh, he was in. They all were. Jamal sat stiffly on a couch too expensive to put his feet up on, listening as the pregnant woman, Lena, her name is Lena *, explained in a low voice. That seat you gave me, it wasn't just kindness. It was a test. His stomach dropped. A test for what? Lena exchanged a glance with the suited man. Let's just say, my family believes in rewarding the right people. She slid an envelope across the coffee table. Jamal didn't touch it. Whatever was inside, he wasn't sure he wanted it. But the way Lena was looking at him, like he held something precious just by being there, made him wonder if he even had a choice. Evelyn's front door creaked open without a knock. She didn't turn around. Took you long enough, she said, her voice dry. The man in the leather jacket chuckled, stepping inside. You called, we came. Same as always. Behind him, 2 more figures filled the doorway, one tall and lean, the other built like a bulldozer. Evelyn finally turned, and for the first time since the cops had shoved her against that car, she smiled. Good. Then let's get to work. Somewhere in the city, a news van pulled up outside the precinct. A reporter adjusted her mic, her producer murmuring in her earpiece. This wasn't just another story. This was the kind of thing that could blow a city apart. And she intended to be the one holding the match. The clock was ticking. Secrets were peeling open. And by the time the sun set, nothing would be the same. But for now, the storm was just beginning. Evelyn's living room had become a war room. Maps, files, and old photographs covered every surface, each one a piece of a puzzle decades in the making. The man in the leather jacket, Marcus, his name was Marcus, tapped a faded newspaper clipping. "This is where it starts," he said, his voice low. "Same precinct, different faces. They've been playing this game a long time." The bulldozer of a man, whose name tag from some old job still read *Ray*, cracked his knuckles. "So we remind them how it ends." Evelyn watched them, these men who had once been her soldiers, now older, angrier, but just as loyal. She picked up the phone again. One more call to make. This time, the voice that answered wasn't a friend. "Chief Morrison," she said, her tone ice-cold. "You've got until sundown to make this right." The line went dead before he could respond. "Good. Let him sweat." Jamal's fingers trembled as he finally opened the envelope. Inside wasn't money, like he'd half expected. It was a key. And an address different from the one he was at now. Lena leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's yours. No strings. Just, go see it." The suited man, her brother, apparently, finally spoke. "Our father believed in paying debts. You gave Lena your seat when no one else would. That meant something." Jamal's head spun. None of this made sense. But when he stepped outside later, the key burning a hole in his pocket, he realized something else. He was being followed. A black sedan idled at the end of the block. Watching. Waiting. He ducked into an alley, heart pounding. What the hell had he just walked into? At the precinct, Officer Harris's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. They know. His blood ran cold. The bodycam footage. The reports. All of it, someone had gotten to it. His sergeant's door was shut, voices raised inside. He didn't need to hear the words to know. The walls were closing in. He thought about running. Thought about the gun in his locker. But then he thought about his brother's voice on the phone last night. You gotta fix this, Dan. Before it fixes you. Too late for that now. The news van's camera lights flicked on as the reporter smoothed her blazer. "This is Tanya Cole, live outside the 12th precinct, where sources confirm an internal investigation is underway following allegations of misconduct against an elderly black veteran." She paused, listening to her earpiece, then her eyes widened slightly. "And we're just receiving reports that a group of community leaders, including several prominent veterans advocates, have arrived at the scene demanding immediate transparency." Behind her, the precinct doors burst open. Evelyn walked out, flanked by Marcus and Ray, her spine straight as a rifle barrel. The camera zoomed in. The whole city would see this. Jamal stood in front of the new address, a small garage on the outskirts of town. The key fit perfectly. Inside wasn't a car. It was a studio. Music equipment, brand new, still wrapped in plastic. A note taped to a microphone stand, for the voice we almost never heard. Lena's dad. His breath caught. How? How did they know music was his dream? The sound of tires screeching outside snapped him back to reality. The black sedan. Doors slamming. He had seconds to decide, run, or face whatever was coming. Evelyn stood toe-to-toe with Chief Morrison on the precinct steps, the cameras eating it up. "You trained them," she said, just loud enough for the mics to catch. "Now you live with what they've done." Behind the chief, Officer Harris watched, his hand twitching near his belt. Marcus saw it too, shifting his weight just enough to block Evelyn. "Not today. Not ever again." Somewhere in the city, a radio played softly in an empty room. A news bulletin cut through the music, and in breaking news, documents have just been leaked to this station alleging a years-long pattern of misconduct within the department, the voice faded into static. The pieces were in motion. The players were in place. And somewhere, maybe in that garage, maybe on those precinct steps, the first match was about to be struck. The only question left was, Who would burn? The garage door slammed shut behind Jamal with a metallic clang that echoed like a gunshot. His pulse roared in his ears as heavy footsteps crunched gravel outside. The black sedan's headlights bled through the gaps in the garage door, slicing the darkness into prison bar stripes across his face. "Open up, kid." The voice was calm, practiced, the kind of tone cops use before things turn ugly. Jamal's fingers found the microphone stand, its cold metal the only weapon he had. Then his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Back door. Now. At the precinct steps, Chief Morrison's face went sheet white as the reporter's cameraman suddenly swung his lens toward a new arrival, a wiry man in a postal uniform pushing through the crowd with a battered briefcase. Evelyn's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ah. Right on time." The postal worker handed the case to Marcus, who popped the latches with theatrical slowness. Inside weren't documents, but a vintage Army-issue field phone, its handset already off the hook. Evelyn took it without hesitation. "General Whitmore?" "Yes, sir." "They're all listening now." Officer Harris's hand froze halfway to his service weapon as every cell phone in the crowd simultaneously lit up with the same emergency alert tone. The reporter gasped as her monitor showed the station's inbox flooding with identical emails, each containing bodycam footage from a dozen different arrests, all showing the same pattern, the same faces, the same brutal plays from the same handbook. But the timestamp on the earliest clip made Marcus grin like a shark. 1998. "Evelyn, you been sitting on this since Clinton was in office?" Lena's brother materialized beside Jamal at the garage's rear exit, his expensive suit now covered by a janitor's jumpsuit. "Change of plans," he muttered, shoving a motorcycle helmet into Jamal's chest. The roar of engines outside wasn't from the sedan. 3 bikers in full-face helmets skidded to a stop in the alley. "Not cops." "Not quite." The lead rider flipped up his visor to reveal a jagged scar. "Your Uber's here, kid. Lena says you've got a voice worth hearing." Behind them, the garage's front door groaned as someone started forcing it. Evelyn's field phone crackled as the voice on the other end, some Pentagon relic by the sound of it, started reciting what sounded like coordinates. The chief actually staggered back a step when he recognized them. That's the evidence locker annex." "How the hell?" Ray finally spoke up, his bass rumble cutting through the chaos. "Y'all really thought veterans don't keep receipts?" The crowd surged forward as the live broadcast kept rolling, the reporter now shouting questions about alleged secret repositories of misconduct evidence. Jamal's helmet visor fogged up from his panicked breathing as the bikers weaved through backstreets. The lead rider kept glancing at his phone, at a live feed of the precinct showdown. "Your grandma's a stone-cold legend, kid," he shouted over the wind. Jamal barely had time to process that before they skidded into the loading dock of a radio station, where Lena stood holding a clipboard like a weapon. "Studio time's booked," she said, shoving him toward the doors. "Tell your story. The whole city's listening." Through the glass, he could see the studio board lit up like a Christmas tree, every line flashing with incoming calls. Back at the precinct, Marcus pocketed Evelyn's field phone with a satisfied click. "Game over, Chief. The old man just confirmed the 101st Airborne's Law Division is en route to secure those evidence lockers." Officer Harris finally drew his weapon, but not at Evelyn. At his own commanding officer. "You swore this was just one bad stop," he hissed, the gun wavering. "You said she was nobody," the radio station's sound engineer suddenly cursed, pointing at Jamal's microphone. "We're being hijacked." Every speaker in the studio blasted to life with the same audio feed, Evelyn's voice, crystal clear, reciting what sounded like military serial numbers. "These are the names of every officer who ever crossed the line on my watch," her voice echoed across the airwaves. "And tonight, they answer for it." The studio monitors cut to a live satellite feed, 3 black SUVs with federal plates rolling through the precinct gates. But the real shock came when the camera panned to the passenger window of the lead vehicle. The man inside wore a uniform Jamal recognized from history books. 5 stars. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs himself. And he was smiling. Somewhere in the chaos, a single gunshot rang out. The lights went dark across the entire block. And in that perfect silence before the screaming started, 2 words traveled further than anyone expected. Oh hell. The gunshot echoed like thunder in the sudden darkness, freezing everyone in place for one heartbeat too. Then chaos erupted. Jamal flinched as the radio station's emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Through the studio glass, he saw Lena's brother yank a fire alarm, triggering a deafening siren. Go, he barked, shoving Jamal toward a side exit. They'll be coming for you now. Jamal stumbled, his mind racing. Who was they? But there was no time to ask. The bikers were already revving their engines outside, waiting to spirit him away again. Back at the precinct, the single gunshot had come from Officer Harris's weapon, but not aimed at anyone. The muzzle was pointed at the sky, his face pale under the flashing emergency lights. Enough, he shouted, his voice cracking. The crowd fell silent. Even Chief Morrison froze, his eyes darting between Harris and the approaching federal SUVs. Evelyn didn't move, but her gaze locked onto Harris like a sniper's scope. You got something to say, officer? She asked, her voice calm but edged with steel. Harris's hands shook as he slowly holstered his gun. Then, in front of the cameras, the crowd, and his own stunned colleagues, he reached for his badge and ripped it off his uniform. I'm done, he said, loud enough for the microphones to catch. I'm done lying for this department. The silence that followed was heavier than the gunshot. Inside the lead SUV, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs stepped out, his uniform gleaming under the flashing lights. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, an elderly man in a worn leather bomber jacket emerged, his face weathered but his posture unbent. Evelyn's breath hitched. Well, I'll be damned, Marcus muttered. They dug up Old Man Jenkins. General Jenkins, retired decades ago but still a legend in military circles, walked straight to Evelyn and saluted. Sergeant Carter, he said, his voice gravelly but strong. Took you long enough to call in the cavalry. Evelyn returned the salute, her eyes glistening. Had to let 'em hang themselves first, sir. The twist came when Jenkins turned to the cameras and dropped the bombshell. What Sergeant Carter didn't know, he announced, is that we've been running our own investigation into this precinct for years. Embedded. And the man we placed inside, he nodded toward Harris, who looked just as stunned as everyone else, was supposed to be gathering intel. But he got lost along the way. Harris's face went slack. I didn't know. Jenkins's smile was cold. You weren't supposed to. But today you remembered who you were. Jamal, watching everything unfold on a biker's phone screen, felt the world tilt under his feet. None of this was random. The pregnant woman, the garage, the studio, it was all connected. Lena gripped his arm. My father served with Evelyn, she said quietly. When he heard what happened to her, he called in every favor he had, including getting you off the grid before the corrupt cops could silence you for witnessing Harris's breakdown. The final surprise came when the chairman stepped forward, not to address the crowd, but to hold out a phone to Jamal, via live video call. Son, he said, how'd you like to tell your story on national television? Right now? As the cameras turned toward him, Jamal realized this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. And somewhere in the shadows, a lone figure watched it all unfold, smiling as he dialed a number. The game wasn't over. It had just changed players. The sun rose over the city like a fresh start, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Jamal sat in the studio, still gripping the microphone like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. The chairman's voice had been calm but firm through the phone. Tell the truth, son. The whole country's listening. And so he did. He spoke about the bus, the note, the fear of being followed, and then, hesitantly, about the darker things he'd seen growing up in the city. The way some cops looked at him like he was a problem before he'd even done anything. The way his mother told him to keep his head down, just in case. His voice didn't shake. Not once. Outside the studio, Lena waited with a small, knowing smile. Her father, now revealed to be a retired colonel, stood beside her, arms crossed. You did good, kid, he said when Jamal stepped out. Real good. Jamal exhaled, the weight on his chest finally lifting. What happens now? The colonel chuckled. Now. The real work begins. At the precinct, the fallout was swift. Federal agents moved in, boxing up files, escorting officers out in cuffs. Chief Morrison was among the first to go, his face ashen as he was read his rights. Evelyn watched it all from the steps, Marcus and Ray flanking her like old times. General Jenkins had already left, but not before pressing a folded note into her hand. She hadn't opened it yet. Some things could wait. Harris sat on the curb, head in his hands. He wasn't in cuffs, but he wasn't free either. The feds had questions, lots of them. Evelyn walked over and sat beside him, not speaking at first. Finally, he broke the silence. I didn't know about the bigger operation. I thought I was just surviving. Evelyn nodded. We all do what we gotta do. Until we don't. She stood, leaving him with that. Redemption was possible, but it wasn't her job to give it to him. A week later, the city was different. The protests had turned into celebrations, then into town halls, then into real policy changes. The corrupt cops were gone, but the work wasn't over. Evelyn found herself at the center of it all, her phone buzzing non-stop with calls from reporters, activists, even the mayor. She ignored most of them. There was one call she'd been waiting for. When it finally came, it was from a number she didn't recognize. Sergeant Carter, a young voice asked. Jamal. She smiled. You don't gotta call me that, kid. He laughed, nervous but hopeful. I got an offer. From a music school. Full scholarship. Evelyn's chest swelled with something she hadn't felt in years, pride. That's your talent, not luck. Don't forget it. The note from General Jenkins stayed in her pocket for a long time. When she finally opened it, it was just 2 words, welcome back. Months later, Jamal's first single hit the airwaves, a soulful track about kindness, justice, and the day everything changed. Evelyn heard it playing in a diner and smirked. The kid had a gift. As for Lena, she had her baby, a girl, with her father's sharp eyes and her mother's fierce heart. The colonel held his granddaughter for the first time and whispered, your world's gonna be better than ours was. And in the shadows, the lone figure who'd watched it all unfold finally made his move. He dialed one last number. It's done, he said. Then he vanished, leaving behind only the faintest ripple in the story. The city healed. People remembered. And somewhere, an old soldier sat on her porch, watching the sunset, knowing her fight had mattered. That was enough.